foster friends and family. I'm Charles, and you're listening to the Foster Dad Directive podcast, where we explore the foster care system and my experience with it. In this episode, we'll be talking about our first foster, who was a chronic runaway. We'll actually call her Elle for this podcast. Please know that I'm not a trained professional. The views expressed on this podcast are those of the host, and in the future, other hosts or guests, and do not constitute professional advice unless otherwise stated by said guest. Please ensure you seek adequate and effective legal counsel to best protect yourself in this ever-changing system, especially outside of the state of Michigan. For updates, I'm actually going to be alternating personal stories along with the process of the foster care system. So I'll talk about previous fosters we've had, incidents we've run into, my personal experience, and then kind of alternate them with useful information such as like licensing, training, CPS reports, and stuff like that. So when we first were going to get placement of Elle, it was an unplanned placement. We were originally going to foster to adopt our second foster kid, but Elle was actually unplanned and kind of an emergency placement. We weren't really told much about her. We were originally told she was 17, so it was essentially easy to have her stay in the room with our second foster because she had been doing like overnights with us and make room without having to change a bunch of stuff around. It wasn't until like the day of that we were told she was 18, or maybe the day prior, and then we'd actually have to change the entire situation around, and I'd have to like change a whole nother room around so that we could make sure that we could fit her in and take her in without having to break any like laws, because even though they were the same gender, someone over the age of 18 who's still in the foster care system can't room with someone who is under the age of 18. So we didn't get any of that information. She had run away from her last foster family, and they were ending up putting in their notice and weren't going to be taking her back. We wouldn't find that out till a family meeting like a week or so later, and the story wasn't fully told to us. It was mostly that she wasn't going to be returning to them. So from what we had found out from her, that in the past she had been adopted. She had gone into the foster care system, been adopted, ended up getting pregnant with her boyfriend at the time, and then the adoptive parents actually forced her to get an abortion and then essentially sent her back into the system. So she was very trauma bonded and codependent with the boyfriend, who was absolutely horrible to her. He was pretty much garbage, treated her like garbage, always talked about like dating her friends, stuff like that, and then she still stuck by him just due to that trauma bond. And this is all stuff that I'm not really telling tales out of school. She posts all this stuff all over TikTok. She's had about 20 TikToks, shares all of it. And since I'm not personally pointing her out, it's just kind of to share what she went through, so you have kind of an idea of her past, what she went through, maybe some of the reasons why some of these tendencies came out. When she came to stay with us, it was told that running away was one of our big no's, and we actually would end up dealing with about 9 runaways and definitely should not have let it get past 2. We were told after about 2 by one of Cassie's friends who works in the system and one of our workers that not to chase her, that this was actually feeding into the attention, and that we were to contact the police and the on-call agency staff because she was over 18, so she's technically an adult. So she was making that own choice to run. And there were times where you could definitely see that it was for attention, especially the last time she ran. She was trying to get us to call the staff to have us removed from the house, which at the time we didn't know was actually a possibility. So she was right on that. We could have had her immediately removed, because in the MCL for our rights, one of them is to maintain safety in the household. And especially with us having another foster kid, she was placing extra strain, being completely unsafe, and not maintaining like some sense of stability in the household. So we could have had her removed. During the time she was here, she actually did get really attached to my dog Perseus. At the time, he was a lot older, so she was told not to have him climb up the stairs, and essentially she repeatedly did so, even though she was told he was too old, and his muscles were essentially going, so it was extremely painful for him. Eventually he'd start getting like aggressive. I know he like growled at me numerous times, so I knew his muscles were starting to go. He was actually in a accident. He was used for dogfighting originally, and then was hit by a car at some point, so his like ACL was starting to go. So the hospital said essentially it'd be a couple $1,000. Like, it was over $5,000, and that they didn't know if it would work due to his age, and that how long it would give him. It could have essentially not worked and been $5,000 out the window, or it might have helped him get like another year out. And it was like one of the hardest decisions of my entire life. So while dealing with her running away, I also had to make the choice back in 2023 to put him down. And then that turned into a whole situation because she was attached and then decided to run away again that day. So it's like I had to make the choice to put like my best friend down down and then deal with her, making it essentially all about her, because while I understand she was attached to him, I had also had him for over 11 years. He was super close to me. He was a big, giant, cuddly baby. He'd lay in my lap. He was a pit bull boxer mix, so he was absolutely ginormous, had a huge head, but he was also one of the most loving and affectionate dogs I'd ever met. Between him and Jade, who was my other dog at the time, my older one, you could never even tell that they were both used for like dog fighting and abused. You never would have been able to tell by meeting them. Anyways, off that sad topic, she had wanted to go into the army or become a police officer, yet didn't want to put any of the work in or stop running. I actually told her at one time that if you run like during a war zone, they could actually like court-martial you, have you arrested. I mean, if it's during times of war, executed for being AWOL. So, and then she just didn't want to put any of the work in. She didn't want to stop running. There was things that she needed to do to join the army, but she wasn't doing them, wasn't getting the documents filled out. She was also making false threats of self-harm, and then as soon as Cassie'd take her to the ER, she'd recant those claims. But I mean, that stuff's still going on your record, which the military is going to pull. And I know back when I wanted to consider rejoining, I wasn't even allowed to rejoin because I have generalized anxiety disorder, which, because it's a disorder, the military wouldn't take me back. That was another huge issue. She was in therapy but refused to do it, refused to make it effective. She saw it as the old, I guess you'd call it like a trope or whatever, where therapy's for the weak, especially for police and military. But it's one of those things where I was in both and I lost numerous friends. Their mental health declined. It's one of those things where it's especially why I want to have my friend on who's a therapist, that you should take your mental health seriously. It's not weakness to talk to somebody. I mean, some of the most progress I've made in being a foster parent was actually talking to a therapist, because I could bounce ideas off from them, kind of get my bearings, decide like what I should do next. And sometimes they'd even have to like give a response. It was just kind of bouncing the idea off from them. My dad and his friends have the same mentality, and it's just one of those things that have always kind of confused me. I mean, I get it. You don't want to talk about your feelings. Their generation especially never really talked about anything, but it's one of those things where I don't want to like always just drink my feelings or like get angry about something. I want to grow and understand, why I am the way I am, why I have the issues I do, why, my brain works a certain way. I want to know all of that. And so therapy, I believe, is super helpful, and she just did not. She refused to do it, even though, especially with all the trauma she had been through, I think it would have done amazing things for her, especially to find somebody who understood her or even could give her the resources, but she honestly was not willing to do any of the work. So I was more or less worried about her going into the military or being a police officer, because those are both high-stress jobs, and she's actually the first of two. We'll later on down the line go over one of the other kids we've had that wanted to be a police officer, and she definitely shouldn't either, and she was also looking at going into the army. So it's been chaotic military-wise for them, and I've always supported them, like for both things, like everything I could do to make sure that they had the resources, and driving them to like recruiters, talking to them about it, everything. I've never talked down to them about it or told them it wasn't a good idea. It's their own decision to make, honestly. So back to like the running away, actually, after like, I don't know, it was like the 6th or 7th runaway, she actually ran to her bio dads, who she then would talk down to me, say like, we're not real family, that I'm not her real father, that she's going to be with family. And in the end, come to find out, her dad wanted nothing to do with her staying with him. He actually said she could not and had to leave. So she was, I'm assuming, extremely hurt by that, because she had texted us and told us that her dad didn't want her there. I mean, in a way, I do feel sorry, but also you can't belittle me and talk down to me and then treat me like garbage. And then when the person you were banking on being the support system isn't a support system. I never looked into her file. I'm sure we still have it here somewhere about why she was taken. I don't really know if there's any reason for me to know. Maybe if it comes up and is a good topic, maybe I'll kind of see, like, not really hers in specific, maybe do like a podcast about why kids are taken in a certain situation like that. I don't know. It's one of those things where I'm still navigating all this stuff. But she also went to live with her sister, and then her sister kicked her out because she was claiming that the sister's boyfriend was staring at her inappropriately. So the falling back on bio family that she was hoping for kind of never really panned out, which is unfortunate. I mean, just because she wasn't with us, I wouldn't want her to be in danger, which sadly kind of would happen down the line. I mean, she kept running. She was telling us that she wanted to be sent with a real family that cared about her, which, I mean, out of all the kids, I definitely had never had any issues with her. We always treated her with all the respect we could, tried to get her help, everything. And then, in all honesty, there's not a lot of system or foster homes in the system, at least in Michigan, that are willing to take teens. It's pretty rare because of the trauma. I mean, all the running that was done. A lot of families aren't going to want to take that in. I mean, it's unfortunate. We were definitely really heartbroken when we had to put our 2 weeks in about the 7th time she ran away and then continued to run. And I honestly don't know if she thought we would actually do it, because she seemed to get really depressed. She stopped with like personal hygiene, kind of went into like a depressive state. She wasn't taking care of herself, really wasn't leaving the house. About that time, her and that boyfriend also like broke up for what I believe was the final time. At that point, she was placed in an independent living home, which was essentially what she was doing here. Independent living is where they get a stipend and they have to budget out their money. With us, she was budgeting out paying rent, and then she'd have to budget out groceries, hygiene stuff, entertainment budget, everything like that. And then she'd have to keep that budget and show it to her worker and show that she was making progress. So essentially, in an independent living home, she'd have to do the same thing. She was in a place where I'm assuming with the area, it was a lot of kids that were far more hardened than her. She was actually kicked out for refusing to do school or work, so she lost out on that stipend from the foster care system, plus the college money, which is a lot for foster kids. It definitely helps them get a good start on life, and she just lost all of it because she did not want to put in the time or the effort. And after she left, unfortunately, we did start to receive mail about a domestic incident that happened. She was in court over it. We don't know any of the specifics. It was kind of something that Cassie was able to Google and get the information on. So she was dealing with that out of there. In the time since she's left, she's actually messaged Cassie after leaving placement asking for money. She's asked for like pregnancy advice because she's now pregnant, and as if we'd have any resources that she couldn't find out on her own. I know when she asked for money, Cassie just pointed her into like a homeless shelter because they were homeless at the time. Though knowing Cassie, she might have sent her money. But she's been through that. I know most recently she's been posting on TikTok about the man who she's pregnant, got the kid with. He's actually in jail or prison now for a similar incident. So unfortunately, I don't think she's faring too well out there. It's super sad. I do unfortunately blame her a lot for everything that happened with Perseus. He was definitely too old to be climbing those stairs. I'm 100% sure that her making him climb them helped accelerate his like muscle decline and his health decline. So, but I don't hold any resentment to the point of where I'd want her to suffer outside of, she doesn't live with us. She doesn't have that close-knit family that we were. So I guess, what would you have done in the situation? Have you experienced the same thing? Do you know anyone in a similar situation that needs resources? Is there anything you'd like to know on this? Because according to the MCL for foster parent rights, one of them is about safety, and while you should place the 30 days, which we did for her, if she's running away, you have the right to have them not in your house, at least in Michigan. And we did not figure that out because the foster care workers did not share that information with us. They withheld it, so that's extremely cruddy on their behalf. So just know your rights. If you have questions and you don't feel safe with a child, or you don't feel you can adequately protect them, like I was working thirds, Cassie's the teacher, so she was sleeping. The kid was taken off in the middle of the night, turning off her data, so we couldn't like track her phone. She wouldn't be able to call anywhere because she didn't have it turned on at the time. So this is all things that was extremely unsafe for her. Being an 18-year-old girl running away, all it would take is one like trucker at the nearby truck stop to snatch her up and turn it into an extremely horrible podcast on another podcast group that does one about horror. And we tried to make sure she knew that, and she completely ignored us every time. So thank you for listening to my ramblings. If you'd like to know anything else on this kid, maybe what we went through with the running away, stuff like that, maybe if there's any resources you'd like to hear about, please email them in to the Fosterdaddirective@gmail.com. Sorry, that's just Fosterdaddirective@gmail.com. There's no the there. Please like, subscribe, share. If you have any feedback, ideas, stories, please send them out to me. I'm trying to increase the quality the best that I can. It's just been one of those things where it's different things. Dogs in the house, chaotic schedule. Like Friday we got a kid, so that's why today's was out so late. I was planning on recording it this morning, but had to get her to school because her worker never showed up. So I do apologize. It is a little chaotic. Thankfully, there's not a ton of people watching, so I do have some leniency while I get my bearings and kind of increase the audio quality and everything. So as always, thank you so much for stopping by. Hopefully all remains quiet on the foster front. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye.